Okay, so I've been sitting on this story for years and honestly only sharing it now because I finally got my revenge and need to tell someone. Buckle up because this shit is wild. When I was 8, my mom married Brad. He seemed decent enough at first. Brought his 2 kids, twins, who were 6 at the time. For a few years, things were fine, I guess. Brad always made it clear his kids came first, but whatever. I was used to it. My bio dad wasn't in the picture, or so I thought. More on that later. And Mom always told me he abandoned us when I was 3. Called him a deadbeat. Said he ran off with some woman from his office. Things changed when I hit middle school. Brad started getting more obvious about favoring his kids. They got new phones. I got hand-me-downs. They got to pick restaurants. I got told to just find something on the menu. Small shit that built up over time. Then came summer before high school. I was 14. And Brad and Mom had been talking about some big vacation. I honestly didn't think much about it. Assumed we'd all go like we did to the Grand Canyon the year before, which sucked by the way. Brad made me sleep in a separate tent while the family got the cabin. So, I'm grabbing a soda from the kitchen one night when I hear them talking in the living room. Brad's voice carries when he's been drinking. And trust me, he'd been drinking. I literally froze when I heard him say, "Why waste $3,000 on that bastard? My kids deserve better. We could upgrade our cabin with that money." Then my mother, my actual mother, goes, "You're right. He's just like his deadbeat father anyway. Probably wouldn't appreciate it." I don't know what came over me, but I just walked right in there. Brad had his arm around Mom on the couch looking at a booking website on the laptop. Some fancy-ass cruise line. Mediterranean. 2 weeks. I just stood there and asked, "So, when were you going to tell me I'm not invited to the family vacation?" Mom looked like she'd seen a ghost. Brad just looked pissed, like I'd interrupted something important. He started saying some shit about adult decisions and maybe next time, but I cut him off. "You called me a bastard." "I heard you." Brad stood up so fast the laptop nearly fell. He grabbed my arm. Not like a gentle hold, but hard, fingers digging in. "You want to know why? Because you're not my son. You're nothing to me. Just some burden I've been carrying because of your mother." I looked at Mom, waiting for her to say something, defend me, anything. But she just sat there with this cold look I'll never forget. Then Brad shoved me back and I knocked into this shelf thing. I caught myself, but he was already in my face. "Your father abandoned you and your mother for some bitch. Now it's my turn to abandon you." When I tried to move past him to get to Mom, he grabbed my laptop off the counter. I'd left it there earlier and literally threw it against the wall. The screen shattered everywhere. I'd saved up for months for that thing. Mom finally spoke up, but not to defend me. She stood up and said, "I've given you everything and you're still ungrateful, just like your father." I ran to my room and locked the door. Spent all night packing what I could into my school backpack and a gym bag. Clothes, some cash I had saved, my old phone. Cried myself to sleep. Decided I'd figure shit out the next day after school. But there wasn't going to be a next day in that house. When I got home from school, the locks were changed. My stuff was in garbage bags on the front lawn. Not even packed properly, just thrown in. My clothes, books, everything. Some of it was scattered across the grass like someone had kicked the bags. Our neighbor, Mrs. Larson, came over while I was standing there in shock. Told me she'd seen Brad throwing my stuff out earlier, laughing while he did it. Said she had tried to call my mom, but no answer. I didn't know what to do. I was fucking 14. Called my friend Jake and his mom came and picked me up. She was furious when I told her what happened. Wanted to call the cops, but I begged her not to. I was so humiliated. The worst part, for the next 2 weeks, Mom and Brad posted daily pics from their cruise on Instagram. Brad's twins smiling in front of some Greek ruins. Mom with a fancy drink. One caption literally said, "Our real family finally." Like they were celebrating getting rid of me. Jake's parents let me stay in their guest room while they tried to figure out what to do. His mom kept trying to reach my mom, but she'd blocked her number. They even went to the house, but nobody answered. I was sorting through my stuff when I found something weird in one of the bags. An envelope I'd never seen before wedged inside my old yearbook. It had my name on it, but the handwriting wasn't my mom's. Inside was a stack of birthday cards, all from my deadbeat father. Every single one returned unopened, and a letter dated from when I was 4, begging Mom to let him see me with a check for child support. That's when I knew everything Mom had ever told me was a lie. I just smiled and I never went back. That was 11 years ago. It took me a long time to put together all the pieces, find my real dad, and plan what came next. But 3 days ago, I finally executed the plan that destroyed everything they built on their lies. That morning, my phone exploded with 60 missed calls and voice messages filled with pure terror. But that's a story for another post. This one's already too long. Pause for dramatic effect. Update 1. Thanks for all the comments and messages. Lots of you asked for more details about what happened after I found those birthday cards. So, here's part 2 of this fucked up saga. So, there I was, 14 years old, living in Jake's family's guest room, trying to process that my entire life had been a lie. Jake's parents were honestly amazing. They didn't just give me a place to crash for a few days. Mr. Reynolds, Jake's dad, straight up told me I could stay as long as I needed. Mrs. Reynolds bought me new clothes since half my stuff was either missing or ruined from being thrown on the wet lawn. But they weren't just being nice, they were pissed. The morning after I showed them those birthday cards and the child support check I found, Mr. Reynolds slammed his coffee mug down so hard it cracked. He wanted to call CPS immediately. I begged him not to. I was scared of being put in foster care or something. Looking back, that might have been smarter, but I was a traumatized kid. Instead, Mrs. Reynolds called the school to explain why I wouldn't be there for a few days. The administration asked for proof that she had authority to call me in sick. When she explained the situation, they were like, "Oh, we need to file a report." But somehow nothing ever came of it. Typical. Meanwhile, I was obsessing over those cards, 11 of them. One for each birthday since I was 3. All returned unopened with return to sender written in my mom's handwriting. The most recent one had my dad's return address and phone number in Seattle. I was terrified to call. What if he didn't want to talk to me? What if those cards were just him pretending to care? But Mrs. Reynolds offered to call first, and I sat next to her while she did it on speakerphone. When this guy, my actual father, answered, he sounded so normal. Mrs. Reynolds introduced herself and explained she had me with her. There was this long pause and then he just said, "Emmett? You found Emmett?" I literally couldn't speak. This man, who I'd been told my whole life had abandoned me, sounded like he was about to cry just hearing I'd been found. He told us everything. My mom had left him when I was 3, not the other way around. She'd met Brad at some conference and decided to upgrade to a richer guy. She literally disappeared with me one weekend while my dad was on a business trip. Took everything and left no forwarding address. He hired a private investigator, but by then she'd moved us across the country and was using her maiden name again. He'd been sending those cards to the last address he had, hoping they'd get forwarded. He'd been paying child support to a bank account set up in the divorce. Money my mom obviously kept while telling me he never sent a dime. Everything she ever told me about him was a lie. It took about a week for my dad to fly out and meet with a lawyer. He had all the original divorce paperwork showing he had partial custody that my mom had violated for years. The judge granted him emergency temporary custody while they sorted everything out. Meeting my dad was weird as fuck. We looked exactly alike. Same eyes, same chin, same way of talking with our hands. He didn't try to be all fake or force anything. Just said he'd missed 11 years of my life and wanted to make up for it if I'd let him. That first night at the hotel, he showed me photos of himself at my age. Showed me my grandparents, his parents, who I'd never known existed. Told me I had cousins in Seattle, a whole family I never knew. Then he asked if I wanted to come live with him in Seattle. I said yes immediately. Anything to get away from Mom and Brad. The day before we were supposed to leave town, guess who suddenly wanted to talk? Yep, my mom. Turned out Brad's business was having cash flow problems. Found out later he'd made some stupid investment that tanked. She showed up at Jake's house crying, saying she'd made a terrible mistake. Mrs. Reynolds wouldn't even let her in the door. Told her she'd abandoned her child and the police had been called. They hadn't, but Mom didn't know that. Mom started screaming that I was her son and she had rights. That's when my dad pulled up. He'd been getting coffee and came back to this shit show in the driveway. Mom went white when she saw him. Like literally stumbled backward. "David, what are you doing here?" She looked like she'd seen a ghost. Dad just looked at her and said he was taking me home. She started going off about how he'd abandoned us and he just pulled out his phone and played a voicemail. She'd left him years ago, bragging about how he'd never find us and how Brad was a better father and provider than he'd ever be. Mom tried to slap the phone out of his hand, but he stepped back. She screamed that I'd regret choosing him, that Brad had connections and would make sure I'd never get into a good college. I just watched from the window. Didn't even go outside. For the first time, I saw her for what she was, just a selfish person who'd thrown away her kid for a man who turned out to be a bad bet. We moved to Seattle the next day. Starting over was hard, but also kind of amazing. New school, new friends, new life. Dad never talked shit about Mom, just focused on helping me adjust. His apartment only had one bedroom, so he took the couch for 6 months until we could find a bigger place. Who does that? I found out later through Jake, who still texted me, that Brad's business problems got worse. Apparently, he'd leveraged their house for some investment that went south. And suddenly, Mom started texting me. After months of silence, asking how I was doing, saying she missed me, blah blah blah. I never responded, not once. Dad helped me focus on school. I was angry for a long time, throwing myself into sports, getting into fights sometimes. Dad didn't shut that down, just made sure I learned from it. Got me into kickboxing to channel the rage. It helped. Fast forward to my senior year. I got accepted to a business program at a good university. Dad was so proud he cried. That's when I got a weird message on Facebook from someone claiming to be Brad's business partner. Said he wanted to talk to me about something important regarding Brad. I almost ignored it. Almost. But curiosity got the better of me. I agreed to a video call, and what he told me about Brad's business practices and what they'd been doing with investor money, well, that's when the seed of my revenge plan first took root. More in the next update. This is already way too long. Update 2. Okay, so this is the part where shit starts getting good. Lots of you have been messaging me asking about the business partner and what I did with that info. So, here goes. When I left off, I'd just been contacted by someone claiming to be Brad's business partner. I was skeptical as fuck because who randomly reaches out to their partner's estranged stepson? So, I did some digging before agreeing to talk to him. Looked him up online, verified he actually worked with Brad and all that. His name was Alan, and he co-owned this regional property development company with Brad. The video call was awkward as hell at first. Alan looked nervous, kept adjusting his tie and glancing off camera. He started by saying he'd found me through Brad's social media, where he'd apparently posted some rant about me years ago. Then he dropped the bomb. Brad had been mismanaging company funds for years, and their business was in serious trouble. I asked him, why tell me of all people? Turns out Brad had been blaming his financial problems on family issues and specifically on having to support a worthless stepson, aka me, who'd run away. He'd been telling investors and partners that he'd spent hundreds of thousands on me over the years. This was complete bullshit. Brad had never spent a dime on me that he didn't resent. And here he was using me as his excuse for why their business was failing. Alan knew it was suspicious and had done some digging. Found out through mutual connections that I'd actually been abandoned, not the other way around. He wanted to warn me that Brad was using my name to cover up his own fuck-ups. I thanked him for the info, but didn't show my hand, just filed it away. That summer, after freshman year, I got an internship at a finance company. Nothing fancy, just grunt work, but I learned a ton about how money really works. My roommate Marcus was a computer science major who taught me some basic coding in exchange for me handling our apartment bills. We clicked because we both had parent issues. His dad had walked out when he was 12. Meanwhile, I kept tabs on Brad and Mom through social media. They'd moved to a smaller house, but were still trying to keep up appearances. Lots of posts about Brad's exciting new business ventures and Mom's shopping trips. Classic fake it till you make it bullshit. During junior year, something weird happened. I got a friend request from Caleb, one of Brad's twins. We'd never been close since he and his brother always sided with Brad. I was suspicious but accepted. A week later, he messaged me asking if we could talk. Said he'd been thinking about what happened and felt bad about it. I agreed to a phone call, mostly out of curiosity. Caleb was different than I remembered. The call started awkward as hell with long pauses and him stumbling over his words, but eventually he admitted that things at home had gotten bad. Brad was drinking more, always stressed about money. He and his brother were in college now, but Brad was threatening to stop paying their tuition. Mom was working as a receptionist to make ends meet. I asked him point blank why he was reaching out now after all these years. He hesitated, then said Brad had been talking about some big investment opportunity that would fix everything, but needed money they didn't have. He was worried they'd do something stupid. I played dumb, asked some casual questions about their life. Caleb opened up more. Said Brad had remortgaged their house twice, maxed out credit cards. The twins had student loans piling up. Mom was apparently having anxiety attacks about money. Then he dropped a bomb. Brad had been telling everyone that I stole from him before I left, that I'd taken cash and valuables worth thousands. That's why they were in financial trouble. He'd even filed an insurance claim about it years ago. I was livid. First, I'm supposedly costing them hundreds of thousands in support. Now, I'm a thief too. I thanked Caleb for the heads up, kept it casual. After we hung up, I broke a glass against the wall. Marcus found me cleaning it up and asked what happened. When I told him, he just said, "Dude, you have to fuck them up for this." And that's when the plan really started forming. I graduated with my business degree and got a job at an investment firm. Dad was so proud at my graduation. Took like 1,000,000 photos. We'd grown really close over the years. He'd remarried a cool woman named Diane, who never tried to be my mom, but was always supportive. 2 years into my career, I'd saved enough to start my own small investment consulting business. Dad loaned me startup money, which I paid back within a year. I specialized in helping small businesses restructure debt and find new investors. That's when I got another call from Alan. Brad's company was on its last legs. They needed a major investor or they'd go bankrupt within months. He wondered if I knew anyone who might be interested. I said I might, but I needed details. All the details. Alan sent me their financials, business plan, everything. The company wasn't actually worthless. Brad had just mismanaged it into the ground. With the right investment and management, it could turn around. I created a shell company called Phoenix Ventures. Hired my colleague Jasmine to be the face of it. She was smart, attractive, and could talk business better than anyone I knew. Paid her well to approach Brad and Mom as a potential investor. The setup was perfect. Jasmine would offer to invest enough to save the company, but with conditions. Brad and Mom would need to personally guarantee the investment with everything they owned. They'd have to put up their house, cars, retirement accounts, everything as collateral. The contracts were 100% legal, but designed so that if certain performance targets weren't met, targets I knew were impossible given their business model, Phoenix Ventures would own everything. I had Jasmine reach out to Alan first, who eagerly introduced her to Brad. She played her part perfectly, confident, slightly flirtatious, dangling the promise of financial salvation. Brad and Mom fell for it completely. They were desperate, and Jasmine represented their last hope. After 3 meetings, they were practically begging to sign whatever she put in front of them. The night before the final contract signing, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about 14-year-old me standing in front of garbage bags full of my belongings, about Brad throwing my laptop against the wall, about Mom watching and doing nothing, about their smiling cruise photos with "Our real family finally" captions. I texted Jasmine, "Everything set for tomorrow?" She replied, "All right. They're bringing the notarized collateral documents." "You sure about this?" I answered. "Never been more sure of anything." The next morning, I watched remotely as Jasmine met them at a conference room downtown. Through a hidden camera feed, I saw Brad's smug face as he signed document after document, not bothering to read the fine print. Mom kept touching her hair nervously, but looked relieved. When the last signature was in place, I sent Jasmine a text, "Now." She excused herself to make a call to the investment committee for final approval. 5 minutes later, she returned and placed a folder on the table. I couldn't hear what she said, but I saw Brad's face change as he opened it. Inside was a photo of me alongside documentation of every lie he'd told about me over the years. That's when my phone started blowing up. 60 missed calls within the hour. Voicemails of pure terror. But what happened next? That's for the final update. Final update. I honestly didn't expect this story to blow up like it did. People keep asking for the conclusion. So here it is. The day I finally got my revenge. Let's pick up where I left off. After Jasmine dropped the folder with my photo on the table, she told Brad and my mother that Phoenix Ventures was actually my company. She explained that I had been tracking their business failures for years and had documentation of every lie Brad had told about me, including the false insurance claim that I'd stolen from them. My phone literally wouldn't stop buzzing. I checked the first few messages. Emmett, please call us. This is a misunderstanding. We need to talk right now. You can't do this to us. I ignored all of them, just silenced my phone, and went to get coffee. I wanted them to stew for a bit. But the panic really set in. 3 hours later, I walked into my office downtown. I'd made sure my name was on the door, and the company logo was prominently displayed. Jasmine had told them where to find me if they wanted to discuss options. I knew they'd show up. They were too desperate not to. Around 4 that afternoon, my receptionist buzzed me. They were in the lobby, both of them. I told her to send them in but wait 2 minutes first. Petty? Yeah, but I wanted them to sit there and wait like I'd waited outside our house with my stuff in garbage bags. When they finally came in, my mother looked like she hadn't slept in days. Brad was trying to look confident, but his hands were shaking. The best part, my mother walked right up to my desk and didn't even recognize me at first. It had been 11 years. And she was so focused on the investor who was screwing them over that she didn't realize it was her son. I just sat there and said nothing, waiting for it to click. When it did, she literally stumbled backward. Emmett, is that really you? Brad's face went from confused to red in about 2 seconds. He started going off about how I'd tricked them, how this was fraud, how he'd sue me. I cut him off mid-sentence, told him to sit down or get out. Reminded him that everything they'd signed was 100% legal, reviewed by multiple attorneys. All I'd done was offer them an investment opportunity with terms they'd eagerly accepted. Not my fault they didn't read the fine print or do due diligence on Phoenix Ventures. My mother started crying, asking how I could do this to her. That's when I lost it. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshot I'd saved from their cruise. Our real family finally. I asked her how she could abandon her 14-year-old son and then post that online for everyone to see. She tried to claim Brad had made her do it, that she'd wanted to come back for me, but was afraid. I just laughed in her face, pulled out copies of the child support checks my dad had sent for years that she'd cashed while telling me he never sent a dime. Brad tried a different approach, offered to make things right if I'd tear up the contract. Said we could start fresh and be a family again. I asked him if he remembered throwing my laptop against the wall. If he remembered telling me I was nothing to him. He claimed he'd been under stress, had been drinking, made a mistake, the usual bullshit excuses abusers always use. I just shook my head and pulled out another folder. Showed them the performance targets they needed to hit within 30 days to keep the investment. Targets that required them to generate 3 times their normal monthly revenue. Brad slammed his fist on my desk, knocking over a cup of pens. Started threatening me, saying he had friends who could make my life difficult. My security guard, who I'd positioned right outside my office door, came in immediately. Brad shut up real quick. My mother tried one last angle, guilt, said she'd always loved me, that she'd made a terrible mistake, asked how I could do this to the woman who raised me. That's when I played my final card. I'd had Jasmine record their entire meeting, including the part before she revealed who was behind Phoenix Ventures, where Brad had laughed about how easy it would be to take this investor's money, and my mother had joked about buying a vacation home once the deal went through. When the recording ended, they both just sat there defeated. I told them they had 2 options. Option 1. Try to meet the performance targets, which we all knew was impossible, and lose everything when they failed. Option 2. Sign over Brad's company to me now. Hand over the keys to their house and I'd let them keep their personal belongings and 1 car. Brad started to argue, but my mother grabbed his arm. She knew they were screwed. She asked for a pen. 20 minutes later, They signed everything over. I had pre-prepared all the documents, had a notary waiting in the conference room. By 6 o'clock that evening, I legally owned their company and house. I gave them 48 hours to get their personal stuff out of the house, told them the company staff would be notified of new ownership the next morning. As they were leaving, Brad turned back and spat at me. "Miss hit the wall." My mother didn't even look at me, just kept walking. 2 days later, Alan called me. Said Brad had shown up drunk at his house the night before, ranting about how his worthless stepson had ruined him. Alan had called the cops when Brad wouldn't leave. I transferred ownership of the company to Alan the following week. He was a decent guy who'd just gotten caught up with the wrong business partner. The company's doing much better now without Brad running it into the ground. As for the house, I sold it. Donated half the money to a charity that helps teens who've been abandoned by their families. Used the other half to take my dad, Diane, and their kids on a Mediterranean cruise. Posted plenty of real family photos. Caleb reached out about a month later. Said he and his twin brother were struggling since Brad and my mother could no longer pay for their college. I offered to help with some of their tuition. Not because I owed them anything, but because they were just kids when all this happened. Not their fault. Their dad is a piece of shit. I heard through the grapevine that Brad and my mother moved to a small apartment in another state. She got a job as a waitress. He's supposedly working at some hardware store. Sometimes I check their social media, which has gone from fancy vacation posts to complete silence. Dad thinks I should let it go now, says carrying anger for too long only hurts me. He's probably right. But honestly, every time I think about how they threw me away like garbage, how they changed the locks and left me with nowhere to go at 14, I don't regret a damn thing. They made me nothing to them. So I made them nothing to the world. And for those asking, no, I never broke a single law. Just used their greed and desperation against them. They signed every document willingly. They mortgaged everything they had for a chance at easy money. All I did was let them fail on their own terms. Some people are saying I went too far. Maybe. But you know what? When you abandon your kid and tell him he's worthless, don't be surprised when he grows up and proves just how wrong you were. If you're enjoying stories like this, make sure to subscribe to Hidden Lies for more real revenge tales and messed up family drama. Thanks for listening all the way to the end.